on in. Good morning, everyone, and welcome into another week of First Take. Huge weekend of football to discuss. Hope you enjoyed. As you can see, rolling solo in studio, but don't you worry. Max and Stephen A are ready to go. Both are in Los Angeles. Ryan Clark will also be here shortly. Good morning, guys. Hello. Look at those two handsome devils.
How are you, Stephen A?
Yeah. What's up?
It's one of those. It's one of those. I have a feeling I know what that's about. Let's get into it, gentlemen. We're going to have some fun. Coming up, Jimmy G looking
Cat got your tongue? Stephen A, you upset about something?
I want to talk to you right now, Max. I really, really don't.
Don't tick me off.
Don't tick me off this early. Don't do it.
Sorry, Molly.
All right, let's do it. So they looked unstoppable against the Finns before leaving with a shoulder injury. Should the Pats trade Garoppolo when Tom Brady returns from suspension? We'll get into that in just a bit. But we start with an NFC East battle in the nation's capital. It went down to the wire at FedEx Field. How about Washington up 3 early in the fourth with a chance to clinch until Kirk Cousins threw an interception on 3rd and goal from the 6th. The Cowboys went ahead on the ensuing possession. Dak Prescott driving his offense for 80 yards and the game-winning touchdown, leading Dallas to their first win of the season, 27-23 over those Redskins. Stephen A., was this more about how good the Cowboys were or how bad the Redskins looked?
Well, I mean, damn. Look, man, look, they had a good day, okay? They had a good day, all right? I mean, Dak Prescott, 22 of 30, 292 yards. Another game without an interception. Running for a 6-yard TD run. He deserves credit. Ezekiel Elliott may have fumbled twice, but he still showed up. Averaged almost 4 yards a carry. Had a 21-yard run, had a touchdown run. He deserves a little bit of credit because he stepped up after his putrid performance in Game 1 of this regular season. He deserves credit. Des Bryant had 7 receptions, over 100 yards. First time he had a 100-yard game since 2014. He deserves credit. I'm going to give Dak Prescott a lot of credit because in between the seams, not outside the number, but in between the seams, he's completing about 77% of his passes. I can't ignore that. I really, really can't. I got to give him credit for that. Cole Beasley stepped up. He's been a reliable weapon for Dak Prescott. So is Jason Witten. I got to give credit for that. I got to give credit to Dallas's defense because the Redskins were in there, they were in position to score in the red zone like 5 times. They came away with a touchdown, 3 field goals, and an interception. 2 of those times, the onside kick, inexplicable on the part of Jason Garrett. They still held them to a field goal. Another situation, they held them to a field goal. That interception that Kirk Cousins threw with 10.5 minutes left, as stupid as it was, the bottom line is Dallas's defense surrounded Pierre Garçon because they knew that's where Kirk Cousins was going, and they were able to recognize his transparency, which is something that the Dallas Cowboys have struggled to do in years past. And in the end, what it comes down to, much to my chagrin, on this particular day, I have to give Dallas credit. Not only today. Don't think for 1 second that it goes beyond today. Don't think for 1 second that it goes beyond this week. It's an aberration. It's an aberration. The Dallas Cowboys showed up yesterday in the nation's capital. Only 2 victories in their last 16 meetings without Tony Romo. Both of them came against the Redskins. That's not an accident. But the bottom line is, even though they deserve credit, and I want to make sure that everybody recognizes that I'm giving them credit. It's only for this week. It's just an aberration. It's just week 2, okay? But today, I got to give it up to them. They showed up. They did what they needed to do, Max. And that is it.
Listen.
I said it, okay? Okay?
If the question is this good Dallas or bad Washington, the answer is bad Washington. And the result doesn't surprise me. We didn't learn anything new about Dallas. We knew that they have a great offensive line and real skills position players, although a couple of them are young, behind that offensive line. That is a formula that's going to lead to scoring some points. They're going to be okay there this season. The issue is on Dallas is the defense, etc. But this is bad Washington. Washington coming into this season was favored by many because they won the division last year. But let's look at what that division was last year. You had a Giants team that, while not very good, blew 4 leads with 75 seconds left in the game. 4 of them. Normally a Giants team that finishes games very well in the Eli Manning era, that was going to regress to the mean. That was going to change. They weren't going to lose 4 games like that. And had they not last year, they're a 10-win team. You look at the Eagles last year in the Chip Kelly kind of, the throes of the Chip Kelly revolt. They were dysfunctional. Washington and Dallas lost Tony Romo, and once they did, without a real backup quarterback, their season ended. That was the division that Washington won last year. This is not a very good team, and Kirk Cousins, who did not get a long-term deal, got a 1-year deal for big money, but that quarterbacks cost big money, did not look good, and that's not the worst part of it for Washington. There are reports that offensive players are complaining. They don't complain just because you have one bad game. That means they're seeing things in practice, they're seeing things in the game over time that are adding up to leading them to believe that Kirk Cousins may not be good enough, and let's be honest, the jury is out on him. That's bad Washington. Stephen A., the proof in the pudding is 0-2 good or bad? They're now 0-2, and this is a team that was kind of lucky to have the record they had last year.
Well, listen, don't annoy me by forcing me to remind you that once upon a time the Dallas Cowboys were 0-2 and won a Super Bowl, for crying out loud. Granted, it was more than 20 years ago. I had more hair on my head and my wardrobe was considerably less than it was considerably worse than it is now, and my pockets certainly were not as deep. But the bottom line is it has happened before where a team was 0-2 and ended up getting to the playoffs, or dare I say winning a Super Bowl, and one of them happened to be the Dallas Cowboys. The other thing that you have to remember this, Max, is this. When we look at the Washington Redskins, you can call it bad Redskins. I'm going to give Dallas credit where credit is due, because it didn't matter how bad you were. It didn't matter how moribund you were. It didn't matter how discombobulated, disoriented, fragmented, or whatever the case may be, you were. If you went against the Dallas Cowboy, that was your remedy. That was your medicine, because nobody was worse than them.
Not when they had a quarterback. Not when they had a quarterback.
Oh, stop it. The fact of the matter is, hold on, wait a minute. A couple of years ago, Max, they went 12-4. The years before that, there were back-to-back 8-8 seasons where they lost the last game of the regular season with Tony Romo as their quarterback.
But 8-8 is a solid team. By definition, that's a solid team.
Not in my world, maybe in the world of Max Kellerman, and I'm glad you defined what good, excuse me, I am glad that you defined what good is to you. I don't accept 8-8 as being good. I accept 8-8 as being flagrantly mediocre, and mediocre is not something that I think is good. A person with your extensive vocabulary should be able to appreciate this. That is the epitome of mediocrity.
Stephen
and
A., what you are missing.
That is what the Cowboys have been.
What you're missing is, look, how did Kirk Cousins look yesterday?
He all right. I mean, it wasn't that impressive.
Why do you think offensive players are complaining about Kirk Cousins because he makes the Dallas Cowboys defense look like the '85 Bears at times? No, they're complaining about him. He just wasn't very good. And by the way, this is an adding up thing, but yesterday may have been the straw that broke the camel's back for them. He wasn't good, Stephen A. And then you look at the defense. Second worst point differential in the NFL. It's very early, but second worst in the entire league, and they're third worst in points allowed. That's a bad defense. So you have an offense that's not worth third worst in points allowed, an offense that's not good behind a quarterback that is so bad that his team is questioning him. Offensive players, reports are coming out in the media, and a defense that is 29th out of 32 in points allowed.
I can't believe you're making me do this.
Team.
I can't believe you're making me do this. Once again, I mean, are you trying to make me sick on purpose and make me throw up on national television where I got to come to the defense of the Dallas Cowboys? Listen, Max, you've got a situation when you look at the Dallas Cowboys, six times they were in third down situations that they converted. 4 of those times it was 8 yards or longer they had to get to, and Dak Prescott, got it done. When you think about how awful the Redskins defense has been, if that's what you want to say, understand that primarily it's residue from what transpired during Monday Night Football. It wasn't god-awful yesterday. The game was there to be had. When Kirk Cousins threw the interception with 10.5 minutes left, they had a 3-point lead, and they were about to go up 10, and then he blew it. So, yeah.
Against a team without a defense and a rookie quarterback.
Wait a minute. The point that I'm trying to make to you is is that, again, Dallas's defense held up. And I got to give credit where credit is due in that regard. It isn't all about how bad the Redskins are. To some degree, it's about how Dak Prescott has performed. Des Bryant showed up. Cole Beasley has been a reliable commodity, okay? And I got to give credit where credit is due to that. I hate to do it, but I got to give it up. I'm a fair-minded individual, even for the pathetic Dallas Cowboys with the worst fan base in American history, as delusional as they are. On this particular day, I must say, I have to eat a little crow and give it to them, as sickening as it is.
Maybe it's because it came as a bit of a surprise to you that Dallas won the game. Didn't come as a surprise to me, so I'm not that impressed with Dallas, I guess. I didn't think that much of Washington coming in. Look, we talked about this last week. Washington needed help up front defensively. They didn't spend their resources there. They spent their resources in their secondary. That's the whole issue with the Josh Norman signing. And unfortunately for them, they start the season against two teams. They started the season against two teams with really good offensive lines. That's going to expose your deficiencies up front defensively. That's what happened. But going in, when you analyze Washington and their opponents so far, I wouldn't say that this is unexpected. They're at an 0-2 start. Their defense looks bad because it's a bad matchup in the first 2 weeks. And their offense is or their quarterback is so suspect right now that players are complaining and it's coming out in the press. That's bad Washington. And they just did that. You were talking about, well, they were in a position before Cousins throws the pick, etc., against a team that is not predicted to do very much this season with a rookie quarterback, a rookie running back, and a bad defense. I mean, they just lost to that team to go 0-2 on the season. I don't know how you could say it's not bad Washington.
Dak Prescott has thrown the ball 75 times and has not turned the ball over once. I got to give credit where credit is due, and Cole Beasley is being effective. I got to give credit where credit is due. You know I don't want to do it, but I have to. It's the right thing to do.
I love to watch you do it, though. I hate. By the way, generally I'm in the position of defending the Dallas Cowboys on this show, but I love to see you do it for a change. Hate the Dallas Cowboys.
Stephen A., let's stay with Dak Prescott now. He put up points both through the air and on the ground. His rush TD was the first by a Cowboy quarterback in 4 years, and his 75 passes are the most in a player's first 2 games in NFL history without an interception. The previous mark was held by Warren Moon for the Oilers 32 years ago. Stephen A., is Dak the real deal?
Well, let's pump the brakes now. I mean, listen. I got to give credit where credit is due, but I thank you for asking me that question, Molly, Kieran, because I don't want people to think that I'm caught up in the source that they're caught up in. Yes, 75 pass attempts, not a single turnover, first 2 games, most in NFL history for a rookie and all. I get all of that. I appreciate it. I respect it. God bless them. But it's just 2 games. Let's pump the brakes just a little bit here and recognize that even though he's got some talent, even though he is good, I'm not willing to sit up there and throw a parade for him just yet. I'm looking at the schedule here. Got another game against the Giants. Got 2 more. Got 2 coming against the Eagles. Got another game coming against the Redskins. Let's also keep that in mind. Got games on the road this year against Pittsburgh, all right, at Minnesota, at the New York Giants, at Philly, all right. They got a road game at Green Bay as well. Home games, you got Cincinnati, you got Baltimore. So, I mean, Philadelphia, Washington, of course, Detroit. I'm like, wait a minute here. Let's see what he does now that folks are figuring him out. It's going to be some film on him. Go get to study him. It's a 4th-round pick for a reason. So, again, that doesn't mean that he's not going to be good. That doesn't mean that the future may not look that bright for Tony Romo, but I'm not about to sit up here and throw a parade because he beat the Washington Redskins yesterday. It was a nice thing for him to do. He looked all right. I give him credit, but let's pump the brakes just a touch. Just a touch. I need to see more. I'm going to require that I see more. I thought he deserved credit for yesterday. That don't have a damn thing to do with next week and the weeks to follow. Let's pump the brakes just a touch, until we see more.
It's amazing to me, Stephen A. It's like the 7th wonder of the world, 8th wonder of the world. I don't understand how you are able to be on the wrong side of the argument from every different angle. So let me get this straight. That was good Dallas, not bad Washington yesterday. Wrong.
That is correct.
It was wrong, it was bad Washington. And now pump the brakes on Dak Prescott. Look, Dak Prescott is unlikely to take the Cowboys very far this season because he's a rookie quarterback, and rookie quarterbacks throughout the history of football very rarely do. But is it too early to say that Dak Prescott is the real deal? Just the eyeball test for a second. Before I get to some numbers to support this, just the eyeball test. Right from the preseason, you're looking at this guy going, okay, wait, he has an arm, he has legs, he makes good decisions with the ball, he can read defenses. I mean, like, is he good throwing the ball deep and get it back? He's a rookie quarterback, things are happening very fast. But how many rookie quarterbacks from the first time you see him in preseason look as good as Dak Prescott? He has been roundly, almost universally praised since his first preseason appearance by everyone, by former legends, by his teammates, by analytics guys who look at him and go, no, that's the real deal. You can look sometimes at a guy like, for example, we were talking about Kirk Cousins. Can you say this guy's a bum? No. But is the jury still out on him? Absolutely. He has not shown consistently that he is a franchise quarterback, so there's a question mark. You can take a guy recently like Geno Smith. You can watch him early on and go, no, it's just not quite. It ain't going to happen for this guy. You can tell sometimes. You look at Dak Prescott and you think, yep, that's a franchise quarterback. The eyeball test says yes, he is missing nothing so far. And you pointed out his excellent stats. Yes, did you point out that he's 11th in total QBR this season? That's ahead of guys like Aaron Rodgers, Cam Newton, Drew Brees. Is it very early? Of course. Will he stay ahead of those guys all season? Probably not. Will he lead the Cowboys to the playoffs? Doubtful. But is it too early to say that that kid is the real deal? The only reason I make those comments I just made that it's not going to happen is that he's a rookie. That's it. Ben, rookies basically don't do it. Almost never. Very rarely. But Dak Prescott is absolutely the real deal. You can't tell that by watching him?
Well, first of all, as inclined as I am to defer to you when it comes to the eye test, considering those big beady eyes of yours, which is as conspicuous as my receding hairline, I'm going to refrain from doing so this morning because let me tell you something right now. We are talking about the Dallas Cowboys here. I get what you're saying about Dak Prescott and talking about the eyeball test and all. Fine, but I'm thinking about the history of the Dallas Cowboys since those years they've won Super Bowl. I'm thinking about how pathetic this franchise has been. It's been the only thing consistent about the Dallas Cowboys has been their mediocrity. The aberration has taken place on the rare occasion they actually got into the playoffs, which they did close to nothing with once they got there. That's where I'm at with the Dallas Cowboys. That's where I'm at with Dak Prescott. I'm not questioning Dak Prescott's skill set. I understand that the brother looks like he can play, and he may deserve the benefit of the doubt. But you know what? Des Bryant, when healthy, is an all-pro caliber receiver to me. Got nothing but love for Des. Didn't stop the Dallas Cowboys from being mediocre. I know their offensive line is stout. Doesn't stop them from being accidents waiting to happen. The Dallas Cowboys have always had talent. So it's one thing to look at Dak Prescott and to talk about him as a talent. It's another thing to imply that somehow, some way, he's going to be able to erase, to omit, to eradicate the level of ineptitude that these guys consistently have put forth throughout the course of 20-plus years of counting. You got an owner, for example. In my mind, he's a Hall of Famer because Jerry Jones is hype machine personified, knows how to make money for the Dallas Cowboys, brings hype to them, gets the headlines, the attention, and all of this other stuff, which is all an owner can do because he can't go out there and play for them. Got the billion-dollar playpen, definitely pays his players, etc. Got the nice helicopter now that brings him to practice. How has that worked for them? I'm still not sold. Somehow, some way, the Dallas Cowboys always have somebody you can point to, you can look at and say, that dude is legit. I like that dude. He can play for me. Blah, 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 blah. But in the end, what does it come down to in terms of what they get done and what they don't get done? The answer is not much.
Well,
because they're a
argument...
Dallas Cowboy, and that's Dak Prescott that I'm talking about here. He's nice, but the second Max Kellerman and others start blowing him up, to a point where he gets and warrants that attention, you're going to get in his way and force that black cat that's perpetually around the Dallas Cowboys to come out, and it's going to contaminate Dak Prescott. I'm actually looking out for Dak Prescott more than Dallas Cowboy fans because I am the one that's pumping the brake. I'm looking out for him. I'm trying to help him because the second y'all blow him up, he's going to fall because he's a Dallas Cowboy.
Look, if your argument is that there's a systemic problem with the Dallas Cowboys, and Jerry Jones won't fire himself as the GM.
Go ahead and say it.
Did a pretty good job drafting Dak Prescott. No, you're wrong. You're exactly wrong. You just disproved your own argument. If your argument is that Dak Prescott somehow becomes the repository for everything that's wrong with the Dallas Cowboys, you want to put it all on him. Oh, okay, I guess you can blame Dak. He can't play defense, too. He can't draft for Jerry Jones, too, although as Stephen Jones has gained more control, they're making good moves like drafting Dak Prescott. But if we're just talking about this guy, is he the real deal or is it too early to say? I don't think it's too early to say. Some may, for example, Stephen A., you may feel it's too early to say, but let me say right now, the kid is the real deal, and he just, in his second week as a pro, he just went on the road and beat a divisional rival. And I know that Washington isn't good, and I just argued that's bad Washington. But from Prescott's point of view, on the road, divisional rival, a win, no interceptions, real deal. By the way, and on top of everything else I mentioned, he commands the huddle. His teammates like him. He energizes them. They want to play for him. They want to play with him. 100% the real McCoy.
100%. After 2 games, you should be ashamed of yourself. That's nonsensical. Go ahead, Molly. I don't even have time right now.
All right,
Anything
agree
to
to
beyond the
disagree.
Cowboys.
So Dak and the Cowboys will get Chicago on Sunday, and don't forget that Chicago, of course, plays tonight on Monday Night Football. So looking forward to them facing an NFC East team in the Eagles. So we got the guys' opinions on Mr. Prescott, but now we want to hear from you guys. When Tony Romo is healthy, which quarterback should Dallas start? Go on Twitter now and vote. We want to hear from you guys. We'll share those results a little later in the show. Sam Bradford had a strong debut in Minnesota, also the debut of their new $1.1 billion stadium. He completed 22 of 30 passes for 286 yards, 2 TDs, and no turnovers to lead the Vikings to a 17-14 victory over the Pack on Sunday night. The defense did the rest, sacking Aaron Rodgers 5 times and producing 2 turnovers in the 4th. Adrian Peterson, however, limped off in the 3rd quarter with a right knee injury and had only 19 yards on 12 carries, but the Vikings are still 2-0, so they are okay. And we welcome Ryan Clark into the house. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, it's good to be here. I didn't want you to be alone.
Thank you.
For the whole show.
I appreciate that. I need a friend here, some support.
I know you got to hold it down here.
I do.
We're so touched by your generosity and sincerity, Ryan Clark.
Hey,
we're so touched. It's very, very nice of you.
This show, I'm like the 3rd guy on this show, so I feel like when you guys can't be here, I got to hold it down for y'all.
Okay.
It's just friendship.
Is that how you feel?
Well, you are holding it down. You are holding it down today. Your suit is not as loud as it usually is. So I am very, very impressed with how you're looking.
I love coming on here because you always say something about my suit. Because you feel threatened, and that's okay.
Yes.
I understand you're the style, the style guy on this show, and when Max is here, Max is kind of understated, Ivy League guy, and so you get a little nervous when I come on. It's okay.
Whatever. Let's move on.
All truth. Ryan, I would love to just chat with you, but I need to bring it back to Stephen A. here. Stephen A., what happened last night in that game?
Green Bay doesn't look like itself. That's what it comes down to. Aaron Rodgers does not look like Aaron Rodgers. I think it's assisted by the fact that the offensive line hasn't been that great. Eddie Lacy isn't running the ball that effectively. Only had like 50 yards and 12 carries last night. Only had 1 good 13-yard run outside of that. That basically means 11 carries for 37 yards. That's nothing to write home about. Jordy Nelson, even though he's back, caught a touchdown pass, doesn't look like himself in terms of his speed, his ability to separate from corners, gain separation and make things happen. And the Randall Cobbs of the world and others need to step up as well. This Green Bay Packers team with Mike McCarthy back calling plays for things, which is supposed to be an upgrade. there are some things that have to happen. I mean, I saw a 4th-and-1 situation in the red zone that Mike McCarthy decided to go for. How in the hell are you giving the ball to Eddie Lacy when Aaron Rodgers is your man? You don't put the ball in Eddie Lacy's hands in that situation, which ultimately they ended up getting stopped on. You find a way to do it. Had they kicked the field goal, it had a tie game, and obviously, Minnesota wouldn't have been able to gain separation once Green Bay tied the score. You're talking overtime, or anything could have happened. I think, foiling that opportunity hurts them. Minnesota is no joke. Zimmer can coach. They're tough. Stephon Diggs put on a show. We all got that. And so did Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford outplayed Aaron Rodgers. But I do think that it was a product more so of what Green Bay isn't, as opposed to what Minnesota is. We know that Minnesota is good. We know that Minnesota is tough. Before Adrian Peterson had just 19 yards on 12 carries, or before he got hurt, he had that going on. All of those things being said, I still believe that Green Bay can be better. I know for a fact Aaron Rodgers, 20 for 36, 213 yards. Those are Jay Cutler type numbers or something, for crying out loud. I need better than that from this bad man that is Aaron Rodgers. He damn sure need to be better and get better. But he's a bad man for a reason. This is an aberration. It is not the norm. And I suspect that a game like this is going to tick him off, and Aaron Rodgers will show up and make amends for his pedestrian performance.
Stephen A., how is it that you could talk for 5 straight minutes and miss the point like that? You just kind of skim over the main point of the whole situation. Mike Zimmer
Did
is
you just disrespect me like that?
Mike Zimmer is in Minnesota.
You've been on the wrong side of right all day.
All day. All day. Zimmer is in
So
Minnesota because he is an Aaron Rodgers stopper. The way some teams would try to get a Kobe stopper back in the day, Zimmer is an Aaron Rodgers stopper. That's what he is there for, because you look around, you look at what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to get through those guys. Who's the best guy we can find to neutralize Aaron Rodgers, turn him, as you just said, from the greatest quarterback. I mean, by the time his career is over, he's going to be in the greatest quarterback ever argument and might even win it. He is that great.
Well, then stop it right there.
He is that great. But how are we going to turn him into an average quarterback or something less than the greatest quarterback ever? And that's how you do it. His defense confuses Aaron Rodgers. It's been effective against Aaron Rodgers. And really, the Minnesota defense is effective against everyone, which is why yards per game, 5th. Points allowed, 5th. Defensive points per game. How much the defense scores? 2nd in the NFL. So you got an excellent defense to begin with, but one that is specifically designed to stop that guy. And like back in the day, what are we going to do about Shaquille O'Neal? Boy, we better get some centers who can give him some fouls and play defense. That is literally the game plan from Minnesota's point of view. Stop that guy, and they hired a guy who's good at doing it. That's all that was yesterday.
Now, see, this is why they bring me on to the show. Because, Max, you're saying Stephen A's wrong. Then you come up and you're not necessarily right either.
Thank you.
So you talk about...
As long as I'm not right,
you talk about Shaq stoppers. You talk about people getting a Kobe stopper. And Stephen A's a basketball guy, so I know he knows this. You don't stop guys like Shaq. You don't stop guys like Kobe. They just miss. That's all that happens. When they have bad games, it's because they miss.
They miss because you put them in a position to take a lower percentage shot.
Don't interrupt him, Max.
How many times have we seen Kobe with Shane Battier putting his hand in his face and he can't even see the goal and he's hitting bottom?
Right.
When he doesn't score, he just misses. Right now, Aaron Rodgers is just missing. When you read the stat lines, both of you guys have talked about what Sam Bradford was able to do. You talked about Aaron Rodgers' stat line. If I tell you before the game, those are the 2 stat lines of the starting quarterbacks, you couldn't figure out which one it was because you would think that Aaron Rodgers had the 121 QBR. When you look at this game, things started to change when Jordy Nelson went out last year. We can no longer take the top off the defense if we're Green Bay. We can't back guys up. The fake zone play to the strong side, boot Aaron Rodgers out for the deep post to Jordy Nelson, doesn't work anymore because Jordy Nelson can't create that separation. Now Randall Cobb can't work underneath. And let's not talk about the offensive line of the Green Bay Packers who haven't blocked a soul yet. So what do you get when the game's on the line? Trey Waynes has been all over Jordy Nelson all day. He's all over Devontae Adams. Aaron Rodgers actually has a clean pocket. There's no one around his feet. He doesn't have to scramble. All he has to do is throw the ball to the spot near the sideline and give Devontae Adams an opportunity to catch it. He aims the ball because things aren't going right. There were 3 fumbles. This game should have been a blowout. We have guys on Minnesota who can't pick up fumbles, and then when they pick it up, they're getting them stripped by Randall Cobb. When you look at this game, the big part of it is Jordy Nelson's inability to separate, Aaron Rodgers beginning to not believe that he's the bad man that we all know he is, and then you think about Stephon Diggs. Sam Shields, who's the #1 cornerback for the Green Bay Packers. He's the highest paid defensive back on that team. He's also the only Pro Bowler on that team as a corner, isn't playing. The Green Bay Packers are a matchup defense as far as cornerback play goes. They give guys assignments of people who are comparable to their talents and to their positive and negative characteristics. You got Demarius Randall on Stephon Diggs, and he couldn't hold him all night.
Hold on, Ryan. Yeah. Go ahead, Stephen A.
Hold on, Max. Ryan, with that nice little eloquent soliloquy that you just put out there, essentially what you just said was Stephen A. was right about Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
Stephen A. was right about the offensive line. Stephen A. was right about Jordy Nelson. Stephen A. was right about Eddie Lacy. Stephen A. was right about Stephon Diggs. Okay, you pointed. Right. All I'm saying to y'all is this: when you win at that, as beautiful and as cute and as eloquent as that sounded, okay, you were more mellow than I was. Mm-hmm. You weren't as emotional as I was, but you echoed facts that I had thrown out, and I thank you for it.
Let me school you two fools on this topic. Are you kidding me, Ryan? You really are going to sit there and say Aaron Rodgers just misses, just like Kobe Bryant just misses? Battier could have a hand in his face and Kobe can still sink it? Yes, Kobe Bryant's one of the greatest ever. He could hit very tough shots. Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest ever. He can make very tough plays. But that doesn't mean that if you're playing them defensively, you don't try to force them to do it. You think it's coincidence that Aaron Rodgers doesn't play well against Mike Zimmer defenses? That's just a coincidence? You lower the odds that he's going to make the play by making it tough for him. In Zimmer's case, bringing the linebackers up, disguising things, all that kind of stuff. It works against him. Does it turn Aaron Rodgers into a bum? No, you can't do that. He's too great. But it certainly lowers his effectiveness, just like someone like Battier, even if Kobe hits the game winner against him, does the best job you can against him.
Max, first of all, you're losing credibility with each pass a second when you mention Kobe Bryant and Shane Battier in the same sentence. You almost need to get your basketball card stripped, and I love Shane Battier.
Brought it up, and he's referencing the Michael Lewis article.
No. He brought it up to make an example that augmented my argument, not to refute it like you are foolishly trying to do. That is number one. Number two, Max. Hold on. Number two, Max. From last season to last night, Aaron Rodgers hasn't had his #1 weapon, and Eddie Lacy, who has had successful games against the Minnesota Vikings, by the way, wasn't successful last night. Then the offensive line wasn't successful. I don't care how great you are as a quarterback, and Aaron Rodgers was not great last night. But guys got to get open. I was saying this all last year.
Ryan, Stephen A., you look at his passer rating, you look at his QBR against all other teams, and then compare it to Mike Zimmer's Vikings, it goes down.
Mike Zimmer is a great defensive coach, period. Played against him a ton of time when he was tons of times in Cincinnati. This is what defenses are supposed to do. In a league where you can't touch the quarterback, in a league where you can't touch the wide receivers, defenses are built to find ways to stop quarterbacks because the NFL is built to make them excel. So this is not a novelty or an epiphany that Mike Zimmer's defenses are built to stop quarterbacks. What I'm saying is, with Aaron Rodgers, it's not necessarily about the fact that he is being stopped. He's able to get out of the pocket. He's able to make plays. You look at the Jacksonville game, there's a play where the defender is draped over his back, pulling his shirt down. Devon House has great coverage, and he still makes the throws.
Yesterday he made that run into the end zone, danced around. He's amazing. He can do things no one else can do.
So what I'm saying is Aaron Rodgers has to get Green Bay straight. It's not about what Minnesota does. Has Minnesota played extremely well this year? They have. They played Tennessee, who we now know isn't very good offensively, even though they were able to pull out a win yesterday. We looked at the Jacksonville game for Green Bay, and we said to ourselves, hey, Jacksonville must be pretty good. It was a very close game against Green Bay. We watched Jacksonville yesterday, and they're terrible. And so it shows that Green Bay isn't the team that we've expected them to be this year. You look at Aaron Rodgers' numbers last year, 31 TDs, 8 interceptions. That's good for somebody else. Has his lowest completion rating. Doesn't take the top off the defense. The average yard per pass is not huge. The leading receiver doesn't even have 900 yards total. This team has to find itself in Green Bay. It doesn't matter who they're playing against until you can protect him, until you can create separation, until you can get a consistent running game, not one that's give and go depending on what team you're playing. Aaron Rodgers can't be effective. Is he a bad man? Yes. Can he make throws that no one else can make? Yes, but this is the ultimate team sport. It's not like LeBron, where whatever team he goes to has a chance to go to the championship.
But Ryan, just so I'm clear, but he does worse against Mike Zimmer than the other coaches, right?
He did worse last night.
Oh, okay. And last year and the year before, whatever Mike Zimmer's coaching
the
the
other
side
last
is
year,
harder
the year
for him.
before that.
He wasn't even there the year before that.
If you look at Aaron Rodgers' play against Zimmer, it's not as good against other teams. It goes down. By the way, is the same true for Mariota? Week 1, did he look as good as week 2? No. All right.
All right.
You can lead a horse to water. That's all I can say.
Hey, you can't make him think.
You ain't doing a damn good job of it, I'll tell you that much.
You can't make him drink, but we're making things up over here. Meanwhile, Jimmy Garoppolo ran up the score early, leading New England to their first division win, defeating the Dolphins 31-24. Garoppolo was 7 of 11 for 101 yards and 3 TDs, but his day was cut short when he suffered a shoulder injury in the second quarter and left the game. Now, according to ESPN and multiple reports, Garoppolo is day-to-day with a sprained AC joint, but isn't expected to play Thursday against the Texans, but the team still has not ruled him out yet, Stephen A. Tom Brady returning in 3 weeks from his suspension. So should the Patriots trade Jimmy G when Brady gets back?
First things first, I made a mistake with the whole Green Bay thing. It was James Starks that got stopped on that 4th and 1, not Eddie Lacy. I apologize. I had a little brain lock there. Let me say this about Jimmy Garoppolo. Very impressive. Liked what I saw yesterday. And the more I like him, the more I think that he should be traded. That's right, I said it. Trade him. And here's why. Because unlike my dear friend here, my partner here in crime, who just seems to be lost and clueless on too many situations, who thinks that Tom Brady is going to be done in a year. I'm telling you right now, Tom Brady is going to be around for at least the next 3 years on the same level we're accustomed to seeing him. And because of that, since Jimmy Garoppolo, he's got a contract through this season into next year, I think because of how he's looked, his stock is considerably high. And I think if you're the Patriots, considering how good they are at doing business, has a prime opportunity to get a lot for him. That's what I'm thinking. It's not that it's because he's not good. It's because he's good. And what I think they're going to be able to do in terms of trading him and what assets they can get for him. If I'm the New England Patriots, I would do it, because if not, he's going to be sitting on the bench for about the next 2-3 years. Because Tom Brady's not fading. I'm telling you that right now. Tom Brady is not going to fade. Tom Brady will be there. I mean, of course, it's football and, you know, somebody shattered your leg or something. That's different. But I'm talking about just being out there. Age is not going to be the reason that Tom Brady goes down. Attrition in age is not going to be the reason why Tom Brady doesn't look how we're accustomed to seeing him look in the next 3 years. I think that as long as Tom Brady, if age is the only issue that we're concerned about and attrition, that ain't going to be it. Tom Brady is going to be there. He will be ready. And Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be on the bench. And because of that reality, I say because his stock is so high, if he's looking like this, if you're the New England Patriots, package him for some big-time assets. Even potentially, you never know. Somebody might be a sucker and give up a first-round pick for him. I say entertain it. I say it.
Well, you are entertaining, that's for sure.
I'm always that. I'm always that. I mean, there's no
Stephen A. and I were at a post-Emmy party last night, and we spoke to, we chopped it up with Larry David, actually, for a hot minute. That was a lot of fun. And Chris Rock walked by, and those are two of my four on my comedy Mount Rushmore. And I didn't know that you were going to do a comedy show today just because you were talking to some great comedians last night, Stephen A.
Whatever.
You must mean this as comic relief, right? You're being you think that Tom Brady somehow, even though the history of football, that means every NFL game ever played with every single player. I'm talking about everybody. Name a great quarterback. Him too. Joe Montana, Dan Marino, John Elway, a great old quarterback. Brett Favre. You know, I'm not talking about Vinny Testaverde, who could maintain a similar level, which isn't as high as these guys. I'm talking about great quarterbacks. Not one of them ever in the history of football, ever, never, 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 never played an elite level. I need Chris Tucker for this. Never, never, never played at an elite level past the age of 41, or even at the age of 41. That puts Tom Brady into the middle of next season. If he does anything beyond that, he's setting a record for greatness at that age. Every single game he does it. Every single one. So if you think Tom Brady's going to do it, fine. But that means you're taking like a 10,000 to 1 shot on him. Fine. He will absolutely be defying the odds if he does it. So why not play the odds and assume that by the middle of next year, he's no longer elite? Now, the question is, what's Jimmy Garoppolo? Look, I've always maintained that while Tom Brady is arguably the greatest quarterback ever, I think I would make that argument, actually. It's always been more about Belichick than Brady. He went 11-5 with Matt Castle. But just because Belichick can go 11-5 with Matt Castle doesn't mean he wants a Matt Castle as a quarterback. He'd like something more, which is why Ryan Mallett, see you later, Ryan Mallett, they only got a 7th-round pick for him. And one of the last picks in the draft, it just didn't work out by. But Garoppolo, is that Ryan Mallett? No. Is that Matt Castle? Looks better than that. Garoppolo so far looks really good, going on the road and playing well in wins without Gronk, without some starting offensive linemen, without Dion Lewis, playing well. It's not just that the Patriots are getting wins, it's that Garoppolo is looking good. At this moment, the highest QBR in the NFL without all that stuff after 2 weeks. Just because Belichick's game planning is mostly deserves the credit doesn't mean that Garoppolo's not good. Do you want a good quarterback eventually replacing Brady or not?
Max, see, you're slick, and I appreciate that because, see, here's how it goes with you. You're very, very, very well read. You will dot your I's and you will cross your T's, and you will make an argument 1 minute based on what you read, other times based on the eyeball test because you're very, you talk about the eyeball test all the time with those binoculars of yours. Here's the thing. Here's the thing, Max Kellerman. The thing is, I'm not denying that Garoppolo has looked impressive. I'm not denying. Hold on. I'm not denying that he's impressive. I am saying he's not going to play before Brady. And if he's not going to play before Brady, okay, I'm saying to you, what are you going to do with him? You're going to just leave that asset sitting there on the bench? See, at the end of the day,
he's good, though, right? You like Garoppolo?
Stay with me. Stay with me. Here's, at the end of the day, what it comes down to, Max Kellerman. What it comes down to ain't really about Garoppolo. It's about you making the proclamation that Tom Brady is going to be done in a year. Yeah. And that's what it comes down to.
I'm just using all of human history as a basis for saying that.
Look. There are people throughout human history, who have
Right.
defied odds.
But do you
rarities.
assume they're going to?
Rarities. And I'm saying to you that I believe Tom Brady is one of those people. I believe he will play and be excelling at age 41. I believe he'll be protected by the system, unlike Brett Favre, because he was playing for Brad Childress, who threw him to the wolves, and you had the whole Bounty Gate thing going on because of what New Orleans did to Brett Favre in that NFC Championship game and the likes. I'm saying that's not going to happen to Tom Brady under Bill Belichick. Tom Brady gets rid of the ball quickly. Tom Brady throws with accuracy. Tom Brady's primary weapons are tight ends, throwing short yardage situations in between the seams, not throwing outside the numbers. All of these things assist not only to his survival, but to his performance into perpetuity. And the bottom line is, when you look at a Tom Brady is going to be protected by Bill Belichick, who you acknowledge, just as well as I do, has everything to do with the greatness that we have seen from Tom Brady as Tom Brady himself.
For you.
So why let Garoppolo just sit on the bench?
I have one
my
question
position.
for you. Does Tom Brady play tackle football when he gets back? Are we still playing tackle football?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Well, because if he is, and that's what we're talking about, do you need a backup quarterback?
I think we're talking about that.
Garoppolo just got knocked out of the game. If anything, what you know in the NFL is you need a guy who's ready to take over, particularly with an older quarterback, because not only is there always the possibility for injury, even for the Iron Men like Brett Favre or Peyton Manning, who wound up hurt later in his career, or Eli Manning, now knock wood, but there's always that chance. But as players age, the body gets more brittle and the chance goes up.
But here's what you're missing.
Not just because they're exposed on an ongoing basis, because their bodies don't take the hits the same way.
You're really getting good at this. I'm very proud of you this morning. I'm very proud of you, Max Kellerman, because what you're doing is you're trying to be slick in changing the narrative. I am not saying that those are not the points we're making about Garoppolo. What we're saying is, if he's so talented, why would you have him sitting down? He's not going to accept that.
Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years before he took over for Brett Favre. Was that the right idea or the wrong idea?
Hold on. What we had is a situation, you could bring up Aaron Rodgers, who was drafted and sat before ultimately getting the reins.
Yes.
In the case of Garoppolo, you have a situation because the game has changed compared to what it used to be, not just on the field, but business-wise. So you have a Garoppolo who has shown he can produce, who has value, who is now going to be sitting on the bench. Sam Bradford, for example, didn't want to do that, which is why he was begging to get traded. Look at what Minnesota gave up for Sam Bradford with his inept history. Could you imagine?
They were desperate because they lost their starting quarterback.
That's the whole point. Find a desperate sucker out there that's willing to give you something, and if they're willing to give it to you, you move Garoppolo. Because if there's anybody you can depend on, it's Brady.
What this comes down to is you believe Tom Brady will be the first person in human history to play quarterback at the highest level at the age of 41. And I'm saying, let's take all of history as the guide, and if he beats those odds, be surprised. And in the meantime, prepare for a rainy day, because that rain is coming.
So understand the difference, if I may narrow it down so we can end the segment. I am talking football. You are trying to be a history professor. Oh, nobody in human history has done this. Oh, that's what you're betting on. That's
Those who forget their past are doomed to repeat it.
I'm using my eyes, not binoculars like yours, but just my eyes, and I am relying on Tom Brady's greatness to continue.
One more season? Now, he might not even have that one more season. Remember when I told you Adrian Peterson one more season? Everyone, I don't care who you are, Muhammad Ali, name a great athlete, eventually they hit the wall.
That's not what you said.
But
that's not what you said about Adrian. That's not what you said about AP. You said that he was going to diminish.
How was his yards per carry before the injury? He wasn't getting any yards per carry.
I agree. Well, that's game 2. What's the matter with you? This is AP. What's the matter with you? It's AP. It's 2 games, 14 games to go. If he didn't get hurt, if his knee didn't get hurt.
After prime. That's what happens.
Oh, please. It's so disrespectful, man. You know, somebody should just hit you. And the stuff that you say about some of the greatest ever, just no appreciation or respect for what they have done.
I mentioned Father Time is undefeated with 1 draw against Bernard Hopkins, but that's it. Otherwise, he's never lost.
And Stephen A. has TB12 defying those odds. For just the third time, in almost a decade, the Patriots will be home underdogs. The Texans are favored by 2.5.
I don't even understand why y'all are asking me this question. It's a complete waste of time. I think y'all should be embarrassed for picking anybody other than Seattle. Who are they playing? The Legion of Boom against Case Keenum. I got Seattle only because, and simply because, they're playing Jeff Fisher's Rams. That's it. I don't need any other. I mean, let me look into the camera and say this to the Seattle Seahawks. Let me guarantee y'all why they're going to win. I'm going to look the Seattle Seahawks in the camera and say this. Y'all going to go to Los Angeles and lose to Case Keenum and Jeff Fisher. Really?
Oh, Stephen A. so confident, but his pep talk didn't really work. It's been a shaky start for Seattle's offense after barely beating the Dolphins at home in Week 1. The Seahawks put up 3 points in a loss to the Rams Sunday. Seattle racked up 10 penalties for 114 yards. Russell Wilson sacked twice. The Rams defensive line has now sacked Wilson 18 times in the past 5 meetings. We now welcome Ryan Clark back. You enjoyed that little video earlier.
It was pretty good.
That was nice. But Stephen A., we got to start with you after that. They were your lock of the week, Stephen A. Come on, in our Eliminator Challenge, have the Seahawks...
Eliminated.
Give me my camera for this. Have the Seahawks lost their mystique?
Well, first of all, I didn't want to participate in an eliminated challenge anyway, so the hell with it.
You
I'm
played
happy
like
I'm
it.
going, okay? That's number one. Number two, let me say this. Wow. The Seahawks should be ashamed of themselves, but not their defense. Legion of Boom showed up. Todd Gurley didn't even average 3 yards a carry, okay? They didn't do anything offensively. It was Seattle's offense that was deplorable. It was their offense that didn't show up. Now, granted, Russell Wilson was hurt. They say that his ankle was swollen really, really bad leading up to yesterday's festivities. There's no denying that. We understand that. And because of it, his ability to scramble wasn't there. That not only assisted in him being sacked 2 times, even though, like you said, he's been sacked 18 times in the previous 5 games, and they've lost 4 of the last 5 meetings against Jeff Fisher and his Rams. But the bottom line is that when he can't scramble, he just has to stand in the pocket and throw the football. And the weapons that he has, whether it's Lockett, Graham, or whomever, they're not going to help you. Seattle's offensive line is highly suspect. They haven't been the same since they acquired Graham for Unger, who got an extension in New Orleans, by the way. And this kid, Graham, he wants to catch, but he doesn't want to block. So you're depleted as an offensive line, which means you're depleted in your ability to protect Russell Wilson. Combine that with his suspect ankle and the receivers that you have who are good, but there's no all-pros hanging out everywhere. I like Baldwin. I like Lockett and those guys. They're not scrubs. They can play. But let's face reality. When we're talking about elite receivers in this game, they're not the names that come up. They're respected, but they're not the names that come up when you're talking elite. And so when we look at it from that perspective, beast mode is gone. Christian Michael, even though he averaged 6 yards a carry, they weren't running the ball as much as they should have. I'm just looking at it from the perspective that offensively, and it starts with that offensive line and their inability to protect Wilson, combined with Wilson not being healthy, it was a recipe for disaster, and it showed itself by them scoring 3 points. I just refused to pick Los Angeles because one of the most disgusting things for me to have witnessed yesterday was Jeff Fisher running off the field, raising his hand in the air like he's a champion, he's accomplished something. I was at an event for the Los Angeles Rams in Beverly Hills on Saturday night, guys, and I ran across some guys that were a lot of fun, a lot of great guys within the Rams organization, arguing with me about their team winning this game. I said, there's no way in hell. I got interviewed by ESPN 710 LA at their tailgate party before the game yesterday, which I was at, okay? And I was telling the crowd there was no way in hell Seattle was going to lose this game. All because of Jeff Fisher. And Jeff Fisher gets to walk off the field like he's accomplished something, and it glosses over the fact that entering his 22nd season as an NFL head coach, he's only been to the playoffs 6 times. It was disgusting. It was nauseating. Made me want to throw up. But these are the things that happen over the course of a full NFL regular season. I got to take my comeuppance. I understand, but it was by default. Russell Wilson wasn't healthy.
Rams have played the Seahawks very tough in recent years. Since 2014, they've beaten them 4 times. No other team
we know that.
has beaten Seattle more than 1 time in the regular season over that span. They beat them twice last year. They just match up well. And going into this game, First game in L.A. in 22 years. They're going to be amped up to play them. And Seattle started slowly last year, 0-2. Then they wound up 2-4 after 6 games. Don't forget, they wound up winning a playoff game last year. So this is the kind of philosophy in Seattle seems to be, look, and I'm very pro-offensive line. Spend your resources on your offensive line. But that's not the only way to get the job done. And if you look at the success that front office and Pete Carroll have had in recent years, it's tough to second-guess them. Their philosophy seems to be that in a league with finite resources, you know, there's a cap. That means you have to decide where you're going to spend your resources. Seattle doesn't seem to spend it on the offensive line. You mentioned the Unger trade for Jimmy Graham, who hasn't exactly balled since he's been in Seattle. They seem to be of the belief, Seattle, and maybe for good reason, you don't need to spend a lot of resources there, that if you get good enough players throughout the season, through coaching, through playing together, through experience, they can gel as a unit and become greater than the sum of their parts. And who's to say that they're wrong? Because they've had great success, kind of, it seems at least, following that philosophy in recent years. But it does mean in the beginning that the offensive line is the area on the field, the positions at which playing together does make a difference, and that suggests that if the coaching is good, if the guys can play together, they could, I'm not saying they will, but they could improve over the course of the season. It happened last year, certainly with a hurt Russell Wilson early in the year against a motivated team that seems to have your number, that hasn't played in L.A. in 22 years. You're on the road. Your quarterback's hurt. Something like this can happen. You're not going to win every game. I wouldn't panic if I was a Seattle fan, but I wouldn't say that this is the most shocking result in the world either.
Well, I think you guys have talked a long time, and, you know, they tell us in our ear, you know, how long we have. So I'm going to have to make this really quick and really easy for you because you guys are just so intelligent, and I know you guys will understand this. The question is, has Seattle lost their mystique? It didn't take me until this week to say they lost their mystique. They lost their mystique, and you both have mentioned this trade, but you haven't mentioned why it was such a bad trade. It's not a bad trade because Max Unger got an extension in New Orleans or because Jimmy Graham was hurt last year and hasn't quite made the plays in Seattle that we expected him to make or that Pete Carroll and John Snyder expected him to make. They lost their mystique because they lost themselves. They lost their identity. This team was, we're going to hit you in the mouth, we're going to run downhill, we're going to play physical defense, going to turn the ball over, pressure your quarterback, get interceptions, and at the end of the day, we are going to wear you out physically. Well, if I'm sitting on the other side, if I'm the Los Angeles Rams, if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, if I'm the Arizona Cardinals, and I see, oh, you go out and get Jimmy. Oh, that means you want to throw it. You want to spread it out. You obviously don't want a tight end that's going to block and help you in the running game. You have lost yourself. And that's what happened to Seattle. They lost themselves. And in losing themselves, they are now losing games. You are now putting your quarterback under immense pressure. They started 2-4 last year, like Max mentioned, but they started 2-4 because they couldn't block people. And if you look at the first 2 games of the season, up front, they were dominated by Miami. Yesterday, they were dominated by the Los Angeles Rams. And to your point, Max, the last 3, the Rams have won. They match up extremely well because the Rams are built physical up front. Seattle is not any longer. You reach for an O-lineman in the first round because you're desperate. That guy isn't even playing right now. So you lost your mystique when you forgot who you were, when you wanted to be pretty instead of being sound, when you wanted to look luxurious instead of...
Well, Ryan Clark, first of all, you talk just as long as us. Incriminate yourself, please. Thank you very much. No, stop it, Molly. Just stop it, okay? Secondly, Ryan, I think it's important to recognize that you bringing up Max Unger. Very, very valid point. Very astute in your analysis. Let's not forget beast mode. Because as much as we liked Rawls and as much as we might like Christian Michael, beast mode was beast mode. That was their identity as well. Maybe you should get him to come out of retirement. I'm just saying.
But by the way, in the modern NFL, too, losing a center is not what it was once upon a time. It's more important than ever nowadays, and that's a big loss for them to take. But I think the Jimmy Graham trade at the time Ryan Clark, is it reflected the fact that they didn't know exactly what they had in Doug Baldwin, or at least what he was going to develop into, and they wanted some kind of a greater or an increased threat in the passing game. I wonder if they knew the kind of player they had in Doug Baldwin, maybe they did, or maybe he really has improved like this and it's not just a matter of increased opportunity. I wonder if they make that trade again. I don't know.
It's not necessarily about the production you've seen from the guys. It's about identity. It's about who you want to be. And the physicality in which they played with on both sides of the ball was their identity. And that changes immediately when you change the piece. No matter how you coach him, no matter what you teach him, what technique, you can't teach a guy to be tough. You can't. Tackling and blocking and physicality are 90% want to. I cannot make you want to go. Like Mike T would always say, I'd rather say whoa than sick him. You can't make him go eat. He gotta want to eat himself. And when you change that piece, you change your identity, and the mystique goes.
Ryan Clark breaking it down for us. You will stay with us. Coming up next, Dak Prescott led the Cowboys to a major divisional win against the defending NFC East champs on the road, putting points on the board both through the air and on the ground. His rush TD was the first by a Cowboys quarterback in 4 years, and his 75 passes are the most in a player's first 2 games in the NFL without an interception. So we asked you guys earlier in the show, who should Dallas start when Tony Romo is healthy? Wait for it, 62% say Dak. I am shocked with Twitter right now. Ryan Clark, I don't know if you are. I want to start with you.
Twitter should never shock you.
Yeah, I know, but usually I figured they would go with Tony Romo and be loyal with their guy there, America's team. With the way he's looking, should the Cowboys want Romo back?
No, this is all about.
You're with them.
This is all about Rain Dakota Prescott. I mean, listen, I don't. Okay, I'll be honest. I don't like him. I'm an LSU guy. He's Mississippi State guy. Mississippi State is never supposed to beat LSU. And when they had him, we couldn't do anything with him one night, and I just couldn't believe it watching TV. This is a guy that could throw the football. He could run the football. He was tough. And remember, guys, he was 10-3 and 9-4 at Mississippi State starting the last 2 years. And the only other 2 offensive players drafted were drafted in the 6th round. So it wasn't like he was playing with a wealth of talent against all of these great SEC schools. And if you look at what he was able to do the first 2 weeks, he hasn't turned the ball over. He has command of the offense. The rushing score was a smart, decisive play, and it also showed his toughness. I think Tony Romo was and had been one of the better quarterbacks in the league, but we can't trust him to stay on the field. So for me, why impede Dak Prescott's progression? Why stop him from getting better? Why hurt your team by trying to put Tony Romo back in there when you never know when he's going to be out? They found their quarterback of the future. It's time to continue to ride him and get him ready to be the guy that continues to play quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys.
Of course, people want Dak Prescott to keep playing. That's the fickle nature of fans. If it ain't broke, you know, oh, look, he looks good. That's the future. And yes, Tony Romo's health is unreliable. But when he's on the field, I think you still got to use him. Dak is absolutely the real deal. But when Tony Romo is on the field, even when Dallas doesn't have a very good defense, they're really good. 15-4 with Romo, 2-13 without him in the last 2+ seasons. 15-4 with Romo. That's a juggernaut.
You remember what quarterbacks were playing too, though, Mac.
I understand.
Dak Prescott.
Dak is the real deal, but he's still a rookie. He is your quarterback in the future. He's still a rookie. And in this weak NFC East, you can, if Romo comes back, they got a shot to win the division, and then who knows in playoff time. But with a rookie quarterback, I just don't think you're going to go as far. Romo, yes, unreliable, not on the field a lot, but when he's on the field, you got to take advantage. By the way, in 2014, he led the league in QBR and winning percentage, Romo, and game-winning drives with 5.
Here we go.
But listen, when he's on the field, that Dallas team, just think of your perception of the Cowboys for a second. Without Romo, damn, the NFC's weak. NFC East is weak, and the Cowboys aren't very good. With Romo, you're like, well, yeah, they're the class of the division. One player makes you think that. So Dak is the future, absolutely true. But in the present, if you got Romo, you got to play him.
Here's the deal. You can say that, and I get where you're coming from. But Ryan Clark, a real moment is absolutely right. When you look at Dak Prescott, the fact of the matter is that you have to juxtapose that to Tony Romo. Tony Romo is 36 years of age. He's injured his back on 3 separate occasions. Even when healthy, even when he's effective, the Dallas Cowboys culturally have found a way to lose considerably more than they have won. Now here you are, you've got a young stud who's big, who's got an arm, who's developing as we speak, developing chemistry with the guys, completing 77% of his passes in between the numbers. You look at it from that perspective and think about the upside that exists there. Why disrupt the flow? If the Dallas Cowboys continue to win games, because Tony Romo's going to be out at least 8 weeks, if they continue to win games with this guy quarterbacking the team, why disrupt everything once Tony Romo comes back and put this guy to the side? You don't do that, because if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you've shown you don't have what it takes to overcome something like that. Jason Garrett ain't Bill Belichick. Your offensive coordinator ain't that much better. Jerry Jones and the hype machine that he is, okay, you might react to that. It would clearly be an emotional decision. And so when you look at it from that perspective, there is no denying that if you are the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott continues to shine, you flow with them. It's a big if. And like I said, the jury is still out. We'll see what he does.
Well,
if what we saw continues, you don't go back to a 36-year-old who continues over recent memory
You guys are jumping the gun.
get hurt.
But here's the question, Max.
You guys are jumping the gun.
We have some more weeks to see Dak Prescott. From what we've seen, you said it yourself earlier, in the preseason, the first time he touched the field, they have been singing his praises. That's not me. That's you that said that early. So
he's
all
excellent.
we've seen is good for him. Here's the question you have to ask yourself. If Tony Romo comes back, can the Dallas Cowboys, as constructed, win the Super Bowl? If your answer is yes, with Tony Romo, this is a Super Bowl winning team, then you start him. I don't believe that.
That is sound logic.
And because he's not,
Ryan,
that's why we play Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I get it. That's sound logic, but I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl. But I think with Tony Romo, your entire perception of them changes. And look, here's the bottom line. With more or less the same kind of ineffective defense, like they were one call away from the NFC Championship game with Tony Romo in there. And you guys are jumping the gun on Dak in this sense. Is he the real deal? Yes. Will he have an excellent career if he stays healthy? I believe so. I've seen enough already to say, yeah, that's the real McCoy. But what was the issue last year when Romo got hurt? If only they could have a quarterback that could keep them treading water around 500. Boy, when Romo gets back, they got a chance to win the whole thing. I thought last year.
Hold on.
They didn't. Wait, they didn't get that. This year, they have a quarterback in Dak who's so good as a rookie. I believe with him, they can tread water.
Well,
they can be around 500, giving them a shot when Romo gets back to make some noise.
Well, first of all, the 500 record that everybody was aspiring for them to have was because the NFC East was so mediocre. You could afford to do that. You had the Dallas Cowboys that had 3 wins at the time, and they were still in contention to win the division crown because that's how anemic the NFC East was until the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. That's point number 1. Point number 2, I've come up with a new name, Ryan. I've come up with a new name for Max Kellerman. He is no longer Max. We're going to call him Spock Kellerman. Spot Kellerman is his name because everything is logic. Everything is philosophizing. Let me tell you something right now. If you
what are we doing here?
If you are the Dallas Cowboys, think about this for a second, Max. Think about this. If you are the Dallas Cowboys, do you realize what Dak Prescott does for them? It gives them an alibi. Because you've got a young rookie quarterback, and it buys you the understanding of that delusional, pathetic fan base of yours and critics like myself, because by keeping the rookie in there, whatever you don't do, we understand it because you're thinking about the future.
If you make decisions as an organization to satisfy your fans and Stephen A. Smith, then you will continue to be the Dallas Cowboys of recent vintage. But if you make the right football decisions, you can win.
Listen, old Tony Romo, healthy Tony Romo, is a quarterback that could have won a Super Bowl. With different people around him in a different situation, I felt like he was talented enough, and the numbers say that. He is no longer that guy. And because he is not, It is time. You got to get the emotion aside, the attachment aside. It's time to move on with this young stud that you so smartly drafted in the 4th round.
Did you hear that, Spot?
He's not still the...
Stephen A., we're giving Ryan the last word here.
He's not still the guy? I mean, I don't know. We haven't really seen a very large sample of him in the last,
The best ability is availability.
Year and a half. Right, and if he's available, use him.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much for being with us.
Let Molly have the last word. Let her have it.
Up next, we're going to talk about your former team, the Steelers defense, shutting down the Bengals in Pittsburgh yesterday, but does that now make them the kings of the AFC? We talk Stephen A's black and yellow when we come back. Today, it was a defensive battle between AFC North rivals, and as Pittsburgh and the Steelers held off the Bengals to improve to 2-0. Big Ben did his part on offense with 3 TD passes. Meanwhile, a week after A.J. Green owned Revis Island, hauling in 12 of 13 targets for 180 yards and a TD, the Steelers held Green to just 2 catches on 7 targets for 38 yards. Max, let's start with you here. Are the Steelers now the best team in the AFC?
Nope. They're the 3rd best team in the AFC. That's right, the 3rd best team in the AFC. Now, everyone watching the Steelers so far this year says, what, are you crazy? Quarterback, check. Coach, check. Wide receiver, check.
No, just
Running
get to
back,
your point.
Check. Defense nowadays, check. And I remember Mike Tomlin's first ever press conference. I was like, who's this guy? And he got up at the podium with a hat on and said, Steelers football. Run the ball, stop the run. And it seems like they're back to that. Running, they can, obviously, especially when Bell comes back, run the ball, and they're stopping the run now. So everyone's like, yay, Steelers. I get it. They are excellent. However, the reigning and defending Super Bowl champion Denver Broncos are 2-0. John Elway and Kubiak, I mean, that's quite a team. They did it without a real quarterback last year. The remains of Peyton Manning and then Brock Osweiler, who wasn't good enough to even play in the playoffs. The remains of Peyton Manning, 9 touchdowns, 17 picks, were better than that. And yet they were able to win the Super Bowl behind that defense. Simeon, I don't think there's a drop-off, really, to tell you the truth, in quarterback play so far. And you look at what they've done so far. Cam Newton and the Panthers, they picked up right where they left off. Andrew Luck with the money on the line. Talib and obviously Von Miller with the money on the line, making plays as always. I think clearly the Broncos deserve the benefit of the doubt there. Also sitting at 2-0 with the win over the Panthers. And then look at the Patriots. They're 2-0 without Brady, without Gronk, without their starting tackles week 1 or Dion Lewis, and then in week 2 for half the game without Garoppolo, and one of those wins is on the road against Arizona, and they're getting Gronk back, and they're getting Brady back, and they may mess around and be, as many predicted, 3-1 when that happens. So I'm sorry, as much as I like the Steelers, as great as Tomlin is, Roethlisberger is, the whole crew is, I don't think you can put them above number 3 in the AFC right now.
Well, first of all, you're wrong, but what else is new? I understand. You know, when you look at the Denver Broncos, their defense is elite. There's no doubt about that. But don't tell me some Trevor Siemian. I don't give a damn if he's got Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas at his disposal with C.J. Anderson coming out of the backfield, that they're a better offense than the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's understand that the Steelers are undefeated as well as New England and Denver. You look at New England, you got to give them their props because obviously their offense is predicated on Brady with that 2 tight end set, okay? And you've got Martellus Bennett with Gronk. Ultimately, when Gronk comes back healthy, you got to look at it from that perspective. And I have to sit up there and give the New England Patriots the edge until further notice. I don't have to do that with Denver when you've got a rookie quarterback. And it brings me to the Steelers. This is a Steelers team that's getting Le'Veon Bell back in 2 weeks. This is a team that's expected to sit up there and to have Marcus Wheaton at their disposal, Ladarius Green at their disposal. Yesterday, James and Grimble were the tight ends that caught touchdown passes from Ben Roethlisberger, along with D'Angelo Williams. You look at D'Angelo Williams over the first couple of games, had about 32 carries, 26 carries in game 1 against the Redskins. What did he have yesterday? 32 carries. Entirely too much work. 4 additional receptions. Excuse me, it's entirely too much work. That's not going to be the case once Le'Veon Bell comes back. So you're talking about D'Angelo with Le'Veon. You're talking about Wheaton and Green with an Antonio Brown. You still got Eli Rogers. Now you've got James and Grimble, who shows that they can produce for you as well. Sammy Coates is the third dude on the come up out of Auburn from a couple of years ago. 2 receptions, that's all, but for 97 yards, okay, including a 53-yard catch. So when you look at it from that perspective, he had a 53-yard catch and a 44-yard catch. I'm thinking about the Sammy Coates along with the personnel that I have. Could you imagine how formidable the Steelers offense is going to be? And then defensively, albeit it was against the Redskins, you got the Bengals. Yesterday, you shut down Green. Those 31 completions that Andy Dalton had. I mean, what are we talking about here? Dips and dunks, that's all he was doing pretty much for the afternoon. So the Steelers were able to neutralize them somehow, some way. Their defense is playing better. Their secondary is playing better. They've got more speed, more youth, more athleticism. And if their defense can give you anything with that offense and the way that they can perform, please. Yesterday was an aberration because it was raining, it was slick out there, and guys were being safe. The game wasn't as ugly, so we're thankful for that. But at the same time, inclement weather conditions hindered the level of potency that we are normally accustomed to seeing. But I'm pleased with what I'm seeing with the Steelers thus far. I'm very pleased.
Real quick,
and
Stephen A., who's going to win the Super Bowl?
And the Steelers. It's
Stephen
going
A.,
to be New England against... No,
Who's
it's not the Super Bowl.
I'm just curious, who's going to win the Super Bowl?
The
Real
Steelers
quick.
against the Patriots in an AFC Championship
But you
game.
said the Panthers are going to win the Super Bowl this year, right?
I'm picking the Panthers.
Okay, good. The Broncos just beat them in the Super Bowl and then beat them week 1. I was just checking, but you think, okay, got it.
So what?
Got it.
So
the
what?
Broncos are pretty good.
So what? They're pretty good. I never said they
Broncos
weren't pretty
pretty
good.
good.
I said then I'm not putting them ahead of the Steelers. That was the question.
Because they beat
you
the
the one
Super
that
Bowl.
said third.
They beat the favorites to win the Super Bowl last year, and your favorites this year, they beat them already, and they're 2-0.
So?
Okay.
So what?
But the
who
Steelers
looks
are better
pretty
than
good,
that
gentlemen?
because you like the Steelers. Okay.
You know who
That
looks
is what
pretty
we do.
good? Let's leave it there. Lamar Jackson. How about it? The race for the Heisman is a one-man show after he dominates Florida State this weekend. But is he on the best team in the country? Stephen A. might have something to say about that. Stay tuned. That discussion is next. Louisville's Lamar Jackson had 5 total touchdowns in the Cardinals' 63-20 blowout of number 2 Florida State. Jackson now has 18 TDs in his first 3 games after only 23 touchdowns in all of 2015. Stephen A's Crimson Tide rallied from a 21-point deficit to knock off Ole Miss 48-43. The win ended a 2-game losing streak to the Rebels. So Alabama remained number 1 in the most recent AP Top 25, followed by Ohio State, who blew out Oklahoma, and Louisville makes the big jump from number 10 last week to 3. Stephen A., who should be number 1?
Oh, please. Roll Tide. Roll Tide. What's that talk about here?
Are you joking?
Listen. Lamar Jackson is big time. He's spectacular. I get all that. Bigger, stronger version of Michael Vick as far as I'm concerned. Running for 4 touchdowns, throwing another one. Certainly capable of galvanizing the team. But Max Kellerman keeps forgetting something. I was never high on Florida State. Did you remember that? I certainly did. When I saw Florida State come back against Ole Miss and all that, I wasn't fazed. Derwin James is a bad boy, no doubt. Him being hurt clearly hurt Florida State in this game against Louisville because this dude is special, possibly top 5 pick. Defensively, he's that big time. But I haven't been sold on Florida State. Never was. I picked Louisville to win this game. Lamar Jackson is my leading candidate for the Heisman. This brother's on another level, no doubt. But he ain't Roll Tide. They ain't Roll Tide. And if they go up against Roll Tide, I assure you that what Lamar Jackson did against Florida State ain't gonna happen against Roll Tide. I'm suspect about their defense just a touch. Jonathan Allen, that 75-yard interception return, obviously helped save the day. But Alabama was down 24-3, came storming back with 24 unanswered points, doing what they do, playing big boy football, and put Mississippi State on their heels. We get all that. I see where you're coming from. But in the end, what it comes down to for me is that Alabama, those meat and potato boys, how they play when it's time, how they'll punch you in the mouth and just steamroll over you. It's just too much for smaller teams to overcome. I am of the mindset that Alabama Roll Tide is the #1 team in the country. And I want to hear about scores and how they were down and had to
You're
come
about
back.
to.
Did
Well, you're about
they
to.
win or lose? They won the game. They did what they had to do.
Okay,
They're #1 until you beat them. To be the man, Max, Spock, to be the man, you've got to beat the man.
Being
Period.
highly illogical, Stephen A. Look,
Whatever.
I'm very proud of you that you have divined that Lamar Jackson is a Heisman frontrunner. You think?
We all do.
With
Everybody knows this.
responsible for 18 touchdowns through 3 games, you think he might be a Heisman runner? There's nobody else in the conversation right now. Sorry, everybody. There's also nobody else in the conversation. Not in the conversation for the #1 team in the country. Let me tell you what college football does. It's one of the great things about the way college football is set up. Everyone's opinion goes into preseason rankings. Those are just opinions. And so right away we get upsets like, oh my God, look at this. And it's so exciting early in the season because rankings are changing and upsets are happening. But those are upsets based on people's just guesses before the season starts. So Louisville, okay, FSU I thought was, you know, FSU and a couple other teams, Clemson obviously, I thought maybe their matchup in October, that would decide the national championship game. But it's really guessing until you see these guys play. Bobby Petrino, who stayed aggressive, by the way, throughout that game, was very impressive, has a team here that is just different from everyone else. Look, you bring up how you didn't like FSU. Look at the Ole Miss game. They had to come back against them. Jimbo Fisher's giving halftime speeches and all this kind of stuff and has to make adjustments. That's what Alabama did. FSU had to come back on Ole Miss. So did Alabama to finally get off the schneid against Ole Miss. They had to come back against them. Okay, so that's Alabama and FSU. It kind of gives you a basis for comparison. What did FSU do against Louisville? Louisville took them to the woodshed. Louisville turned them into Charlotte or Syracuse. Louisville 63-20, and it wasn't that close. It was really like 63-10. Those last 10 points are meaningless. They were ridiculous. Dalvin Cook couldn't get anything going. Yes, Derwin James injury hurts, but not that much. 63-20. They're treating them like a nothing program. Louisville is by so far the #1 team in the country right now.
It's ridiculous.
That if you want to say to beat the team, you got to beat the team. You got to beat the team. The team to beat right now is Louisville.
Well, listen, what I'm saying to you is this. Louisville moved up 7 spots, man. What else the hell do you want? They don't deserve to be #1 yet. Let them beat Clemson when they play them in a couple of weeks. Hold on. Let them beat Clemson in a couple of weeks. Let them beat Houston near the tail end of the season. I think that game is like November 17th. Come talk to me at that particular moment in time. I told you I wasn't high on Florida State. I stand by that. I look at Alabama. Everybody's gunning for them. Everybody's bringing their A game. And by the way, I said Mississippi State. I meant Ole Miss. I apologize. They played Mississippi State later on. The point that I'm trying to make to you is this. When you look at Roll Tide and Nick Saban and who they are, the reigning, defending national champions, everybody's coming at them with their A game. There is something to be said about being the champion and having to fend off everybody's A game week after week after week.
So,
you have got to beat them.
If you're Alabama, but not if you're the Broncos.
Without beating
if you're
them,
the Broncos, give the #1 spot to the Steelers, but not
this is college football.
It's not
pro football.
Do you understand? Right, because
football.
college football is heavily dependent on everyone's opinions, which are frequently proven to be wrong.
We got to play college playoff system. Let Louisville will be there. Louisville keep playing, they'll be there.
How's the Louisville defense that just kept Dalvin Cook to 54 yards? How is their offense that just hung 63, the most points ever given up by Florida State
They're worthy of being the number 3 team. They're worthy of being the number 3 team in the nation.
Because they started out underrated.
You got to beat #1, which they will get their chance to do if they run the table. They will get their chance.
Yes.
We
Alabama
shall see.
will get their chance to beat #1, which at this moment looks like Louisville.
Who's #1 right now? Who's #1? So, Mr. Smart, Mr. Logical. Who's #1 right now? Who's #1?
Yes.
Who
based
is #1?
On subjective criteria.
Who is #1?
Based on subjective criteria, it's Alabama.
Can I get an answer for my question? Can I get an answer for my question?
Subjectively.
Alabama.
Right.
#1.
But if you want to actually use the evidence, then it's Louisville. I mean, it's up to you. What do you want to use?
All right, guys. Lamar Jackson is the Heisman favorite, according to Westgate, Las Vegas. Coming up, don't forget, Monday Night Football is tonight. Up next, we shall discuss that game in Chicago as rookie quarterback Carson Wentz goes against Stephen A's boy, Jay Cutler. Who has the bigger game tonight? Don't miss it. Next.
First Take is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Our Week 2 Monday Night Football matchup has Carson Wentz and the Eagles taking on Jay Cutler and the Bears at Soldier Field tonight at 8:15 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Carson Wentz will try to become the 5th rookie QB since the merger to start and win his team's first 2 games of the season tonight when he takes on Stephen A's fave, Jay Cutler and the Bears. Stephen A., who are you trusting more this evening, Wentz or Cutler?
Well, I'm trusting Wentz. I mean, I know that Jay Cutler is the quarterback for the Chicago Bears. I mean, is that a trick question? You're going to ask the word trust. I'll be damned if I'm going to trust Jay Cutler, not to mention the fact that I'm not going to have to because Chicago's going to try to get their running game going because Jeremy Langford only registered 57 yards and 17 carries in Week 1 against Houston. You've got pressure coming from the edges in Graham and Barwin. We'll see what the Eagles do in terms of getting to Jay Cutler because he was sacked 5 times against Houston. The Eagles don't have that kind of pressure. But in the end, I think that Carson Wentz is a bit more legitimate than the Bears might think right now, even though Vic Fangio, the defensive coordinator for Chicago, was very praiseworthy of him. I think it comes down to Carson Wentz and what that offense can do with Matthews and the crew and Sproles. I think he'll be utilized. I think the Eagles win this game 27-23.
I think the Bears win. They need it more. The Eagles might be looser because they're kind of playing with house money at this point. The Bears are more desperate at home. They really need a win. And it's not like it's the NFC Championship game, Stephen A. I mean, Cutler's been a solid regular season quarterback. And by the way, has Wentz passed the eyeball test early in his career, 1 game? Yes, absolutely. So did Cutler. I mean, Cutler, once upon a time, passed the eyeball test. To say you trust him, you need to see more. Well, I'm saying you're using the eyeball test. You need to see more than 1 game to say you trust the guy, even if you don't trust Cutler. This ain't a playoff game. If it was the playoffs, I could see where you say maybe you don't trust Cutler because of what you've seen in the past. But in the regular season, you could do worse than Jay Cutler. He's been a solid, kind of middle-of-the-pack NFL quarterback for most of his career in the regular season. Let's be honest about it.
Stephen A.
I'm being very honest. No, I don't believe in Jay Cutler.
Stephen A., I got
and he's got
something
better
for you.
offensive weapons. Alshon Jeffrey's got more weapons.
Stephen A., I got something for you real quick. Check this out. This was yesterday at the Cowboys-Redskins game in Washington. Wizards guard John Wall rocking the Cowboys jersey in front of Washington fans. How do you feel about that?
I think John Wall's trying to get traded. We've heard stories about his relationship with Bradley Beal. Ernie Grunfeld and those guys definitely got to upgrade in terms of getting him a better supporting cast. He's being Bradley Beal is being paid, damn near $40 million more than John Wall right now. I think this is him saying, I want to get the hell out. The man is from Raleigh, North Carolina. What are you wearing a Cowboys jersey to the game at FedEx Field for?
He bought into that America's team nonsense.
He said, get me the hell out of here. That's why he did that
Mavericks?
yesterday.
Where's he going?
John Wall?
Bye, everybody. See you tomorrow.